I guess we're live. All right. Hopefully we'll get some people coming in here in a second. But Sherry, how are you?
I'm so happy to be here with you, Brian.
Oh, I'm happy to have you here with me. Thank you.
This is fun.
You're just like a little bundle of joy that's just walking around with a hat on. And you know what I mean?
I like that. Thank you. I'll take that.
You're welcome. Absolutely. So today, this is my first time using StreamYard. I usually do it on Facebook Live, so I hope that I'm gonna just take a quick look here and see. I don't know if we're gonna be able to get comments or not. I have to learn how to do this. I thought I knew how, but well, what the heck? So here we go. Tonight, absolutely. So friends, if you're out there and you want to comment and you're not able to, I apologize. I will learn how to do it. I thought I learned, but it's not. I don't know if it's working. So I'm glad you're listening. So tonight, Sherry Richert Belul, is that correct?
That is good. Yes.
It's good. It's not exactly right, but it's good. Is going to join me as we talk about. We're all just busting and laughing.
I know.
Pandemic depression. Oh yeah. You know, the pandemic depression, and it, you know, it's a real thing. You know, for a lot of us who've been isolating for so long, and may have lost a job or some work, or not able to see our friends and family members, or connect with loved ones, or or just go out and see our friends. It all starts to add up when you start chalking up the months, right? Yeah.
Today, Brian, can I just jump in? I'm sorry.
I want you to, please. No, this is equal opportunity talk radio.
I was talking to some writers today, and the metaphor came up of how hard it is to face the blank page in writing. But we realized that there's also facing the blank page in life. And that can cause a sense of, feeling kind of paralyzed or feeling depressed even. And I thought that was a really apt metaphor because of where we are. And oftentimes for people, like the future, even if it's tomorrow or, we've got something planned, a birthday party or something, we rely on that to fuel us. And we've got a blank page right now.
I know exactly what you're talking about because, well, I'll share a brief story about me, and then, if you have any, I'd love to hear what you have to say. But just touching on that point that you made, I'm usually very optimistic and positive, and I'm always kind of just thinking about positive experiences, good things, connections, opportunities coming to me in the future. And since travel is kind of negated right now a little bit, and all the isolating, and me with my surgery, I'm throwing all that on top of it, and my diagnosis, it's kind of put a cap on what I can look forward to. I mean, well, you know what I'm saying. It's not. I don't have something to necessarily look forward to tangibly like I might have before, whether it was a road trip or what have you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it does mess with one, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's just one. I mean, I'm just bringing that up as like one part of all this, because I think this about me, but I just always like to start whenever I meet new people. Hi, new people. Is that I have a history of anxiety and depression. Now, fortunately, I feel so blessed that this was a lot of my youth, and I spent many, many years swimming around in those dark waters, and I've now spent many, many, many years swimming out of them, which I'm so grateful for. So I feel as if I always say to people, like, I'm no stranger to the dark, and I feel lucky that I've had a lot of practice finding tools and ways to stay in the light.
Yeah.
And I suspect you have some stories to tell too in that way of.
Yeah, gosh darn it. It's interesting. I mean, I think I'll try to make this not too long. So my MO up until I started becoming a lot more self-aware was to probably shove stuff under the rug a little bit. And luckily I still kind of had a positive, optimistic outlook on things, and was, you know, kind of like that, you know, connecting with people and stuff. I think there was a little bit of a darkness lying underneath there, you know, that wanted to be released, wanted to be explored, had some light shown on it, you know, just to kind of make me a healthier person. And I think there was a lot of parts of me that were held back from being my true self, because, you know, I would worry about what other people thought about me, and I would let that kind of run my life a little bit. Yeah, you know, I was being me and I was doing some cool things and stuff, you know, but yet still I was not totally comfortable in my skin because I hadn't learned how to love and accept myself. And as I got more and more self-aware, you know, it became more clear, and I've tried to do a lot of work on letting some of that out, and some of it doesn't come out until it's ready to come out. And it's interesting with this isolating that we've all had to go through, but that I've had to go through at the same time of dealing with cancer diagnosis 5 months ago, and then having surgery postponed a couple times, then finally having surgery and having to do it on my own, the whole thing on my own, basically. You know, we all are, but throw surgery on top of it, and then to heal on my own also kind of, I had to be really strong for myself. And luckily, you know, I've had some things that I've had to go through in the past, which maybe gave me the strength to know that I could do it. But these last couple of weeks, I think that the shock started to wear off a little bit of how strong I've had to be the last 5 months.
Yeah.
And last week I felt pretty down and just needed to just kind of be. And, you know, it was weird. It's weird how different things can trigger those things that want to come out, whether it's a movie or a scene you see. A couple things started triggering stuff for me and bringing up some of that. You know, I still wasn't really able to have a really good cry, but yet I started feeling emotional. But I watched the Lance Armstrong part 1 of the documentary on ESPN Sunday night, and I followed him when I was young. We both started in triathlons at the same time before he got into biking way back in 1987. So I'm familiar with his story, but he had a really bad cancer deal. You know, he was like stage 4, and it was in all parts of his brain, and he overcame it. But when they started doing that, it's like, oh shit, here it comes. You know, I was equating what he went through with what I went through on my own. And it's making me a little emotional right now. And then I was on a show a couple nights ago where we just talked about my experience the last 4 months, and oh my God, you know, it started kind of, it started coming up. And it still wants to come up, but we're all having to deal with varying levels of depression in our everyday life all the time. But then when you throw something like this on it, it really can be a real humdinger. So now it's your turn.
Thank you. No, first of all, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
you know, because it's important, and a lot of things are coming in at once. So one thing is, I just happened to look up, which I have an article from the Washington Post that I saw today that said 34% of Americans right now have some form of depression and anxiety. That just came out today. So
34%? I would think it'd almost be higher.
Well, yeah.
I don't know, with all the conspiracy stuff going on and everything else, right?
Well, in any case, that's really high, and it could be higher. And so there's that. The second thing is that I just remembered something someone told me once, which is that grief piggybacks upon itself. And so oftentimes, like what you've gone through, it's trauma, right? And trauma and grief are closely related, you know, but going through this surgery and by yourself and healing by yourself. And they often say that the piggybacking part is that it brings up other stuff that needs to be healed at the same time. And I suspect that that's one thing that is going on right now too, is that there's so much loss happening of all kinds. And I personally, you know, I just think whatever kind of loss we're going through is our loss. You know, it doesn't matter if it's like, you know, our daughter was supposed to graduate from high school and we don't get to have the ceremony, or if someone we know, you know, is sick, and you know, it's all grief, it's all loss, and we feel it.
Yeah.
And maybe it's piggybacking as a, as a culture upon a lot of other losses that, like you said, typically we're just like, oh, I'm so busy, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. And we're able to sort of push it aside, but we don't really have that busy life right now. And
we're forced to look in the mirror a little bit, right?
We're forced to look in the mirror a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
How's it been for you?
Well, so it's interesting, right? Like I started talking to you about like that I'm no stranger to the dark. But truthfully, like this period for me has really been about supporting people who are in the dark. Like personally, I'm blessed, right? Like, so I just feel as if I've really literally spent 20 years with a meditation practice and a mindfulness practice. I've spent the last 15 years with a mentor in my like professional life who's all about getting present, finding that place in ourselves where we can be resilient. So I just have like so many tools. And so for me, like I just recently started a course. Well, I've had the course, but I started coaching with it called Nightlight, and it's a way of finding celebration even in the dark times. And so for me, this pandemic has been about who can I help through this? And that's only because I had all that year, those years of unearthing it myself. And boy, do I feel lucky to have done that work.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I feel blessed too, because, I've the last 10 years, or 12 years, God, it's been 12 years now since I left my family business. My first book was on a bunch of voice and stay in balance, and then the habit stuff. So I'm trying, I feel like I have a lot of good tools as well.
Which is why you're here today, right?
Yeah,
like why you're able to facilitate a conversation about this. And I think that part of it, and you can tell me too what you feel, but for me, one of the biggest things that happened is that way back when I thought depression was like a solid iron wall, right? So I thought it was closing in on me and that it was just going to kill me, literally. I mean, I was always thinking about suicide. So I thought it was literally solid. But I had a beautiful, magical moment that changed my life where I was meditating. And on one of the in-breaths, I thought, I don't want to kill myself. Like that literally flashed through my head. And it was like a pinprick of light in that wall. Literally, I saw, like, that's what I saw. And if anybody can visualize it, like, that makes all the difference. Like, when it's not pitch black, like, suddenly I realized, oh, it's not solid. And if it's not solid, that means I can
get more light.
Yeah, right? I could prick more holes in it. And so what that did was, I'm not afraid of it anymore, which makes a huge difference. When it comes, I now know it's not solid and it's not going to kill me. And so when stuff comes up, I don't feel afraid.
Yes. Having the tools and also having gone through it before and having survived it gave you the knowledge, or just, the, whatever you want to call it, just the ability to know that I got through it one time, I can do it again.
And I know that also that I'm not afraid of other people going through hard stuff. I think that's part of it, like both because of my meditation practice, but also because of my own experience. I feel a lot of compassion and love, but I also feel hope and possibility for people. Like it doesn't drag me down when people are depressed. I just want to support them and be with them in it and see. I love that Ram Dass quote, we're all just walking each other home. It's like one of my all-time favorite quotes. And I feel like that's what it's about. Like I'm up, I help someone else, take their hand. You're up, you take someone's hand, I'm down, we do that for each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times there's really not much you can do for somebody other than just let them know I'm here if you need me. When I get, like last week when I was stuff was kind of come up for me, and I don't really want to talk to anybody. I just want to kind of be, you know what I mean? And it's not like I'm embarrassed to talk with anybody, but it just, in some ways it kind of blocks it from coming out, especially depending on who you're talking to, because it could just be an amazing friend of yours, but it's just kind of co-enabling you, and you just start getting in your head with what's happening instead of letting it come from your heart and just being with it and not getting in the way.
Boy, that is a great insight, and I think it takes it.
It just came to me.
It takes a lot of awareness to discern what's going on, and is this a moment that I need to reach out to someone, or is this a moment that I need to just go inward? I think that's a moment to moment to moment choice that is really important to make, because sometimes we do, sometimes we need that lifeline of somebody else.
Absolutely. And there's sometimes I just want to connect with somebody or just, whatever. But like when it's kind of really funky, I feel like stuff's birthing.
Yeah.
I got to just do it by myself. Got to be like a cat and go under the bed and just have her litter. You know what I mean?
That's so funny. I have a cat too.
Run to the house.
Yeah. And I think that's really, and the other thing that is similar to what you're saying is also, I think we need to sort of discern when we want to kind of just really go there and just be with it, or when we want to use tools that we have. Right. So I think that's the other thing.
Yeah.
And it's only in the moment that we can know.
Right. And sometimes tools can be Band-Aids that you shouldn't be applying. And I'm good at that, or have, you know what I mean? Absolutely though. Yeah.
And right. Sometimes we need a Band-Aid because we're going to bleed all over the place, and a Band-Aid actually.
Absolutely. Yes. No, there is no right or wrong. It's just, you just got to be in the present moment and just try and figure out what that is. It's not easy.
Can I tell you one of my favorites? Just, you probably have heard me talk about this, but to me, I think this really, I'm not kidding. I think it's part of what saved my life. So have you heard me talk about the love list? Making a love list?
I think so, but please.
Yeah.
Sure.
So one of the things I started doing in that period where I finally came to this decision that I wasn't going to get off the planet. I was going to stay, but I was incredibly sad and had such a hard time. I started making what I call a love list, which is for just basically specific reasons I love someone. So I would think of a friend of mine or my mom or, and I would set the timer and just brainstorm why I love them. And I noticed for me that it was impossible for me to feel depressed when I was immersed in that love. So it became like a life-saving practice. And it's one of the things that I always offer to people when it's not feeling like, a Band-Aid or like we're talking about, but when it's really feeling like I want an uplift. To me, immersing oneself in love like that is, it's just an immediate way to pivot toward light.
Yeah.
And then of course we can give it to somebody if we choose. And chances are likely that they could really use that uplift themselves.
Absolutely. I just want to say hi to a couple people that I see who made comments. Arlene and Renee, thank you for joining us. I see those little smileys. This is the first time on StreamYard for me, so I'm still kind of figuring it out. If anybody wants to ask a question for Sherry, please, oops, there we go. Hey, Tamsin, how's it going?
Tamsin, what a beautiful comment.
Yes, Tamsin's going to be my guest next week. And yeah, thank you. So yeah, please, if anybody has a question, throw it our way, and Sherry or I can take a look at it, or both look at it, and whatever. But yeah.
And I love that. Yeah, I love whatever gets us into the vortex, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes, again, I just feel like. And it doesn't even have to be doing the love list, but it could be, sometimes I just say looking for pinpricks of light, right? Just sort of looking for what sparks me, I just saw a butterfly flip by when I did that, when I looked out. That's a little pinprick of light.
You know what I like about that too is sometimes if, we'll have tools when we're in the dumps, but yet sometimes it's just, they're not enough. And, whether it was, for example, somebody might say, well, we'll make a gratitude list. Yeah, well, yeah, you. But, so you try to do it.
Right.
And it's just not enough to cut through because you just, but when you focus on somebody else and why you love them, or maybe why they love you, I think that breaks through that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A little bit more.
And I'm glad you said that, because I think this is a really important piece of all of this, is that we're not able to have relationships in the way we're used to. But relationships are still very central to most people. To most people, relationships are what really gives us a sense of vitality and even sometimes I think a sense of purpose to love.
Yeah.
And so since we're not able to have them in the same way, one of my ways of dealing with that sort of depression that I think people are going through is to create, so it could be the love list, but it could also be how do we create magical moments from afar, and to really let ourselves think about, because again, like you just said, my teacher always says, sometimes we'll do for the love of others what we won't do for ourselves.
And I think that's why this time is especially hard, because most of us aren't loving ourselves and accepting ourselves like we should be, and we're doing it for other people. And so that's another double whammy.
Oh, interesting. Right. So what I was going to say is that, for instance, a small group of friends, we had a close friend who was turning 60. It was a big milestone birthday. Normally we'd all get together and have a big party. Well, that wasn't possible. But some of us ended up surprising her. We choreographed a dance on Zoom. So we were all in our little squares. We're doing a synchronized. We had toilet paper and masks, and it was very fun and funny. And it was a way that we could offer something. And in doing so, we all said, oh my gosh, this was such an energy pickup, right? Even though we weren't able to have the sort of thing we usually do together, we created something together. Mm. And I guess I just put that out there, that it's there are countless ways that we could do things like that.
Yeah. And then yet, sometimes it's just not enough. It's just I love my friends and I love chatting, but it's just, I need a hug, or I need, you know what I mean?
So what do you do? Okay. So let's talk about this, because you're not the only one feeling that, right?
Especially if you're isolating by yourself.
So let's talk about this. What is it that would support you? Is it simply accepting it, or is there something?
I've accepted it. I mean, I'm doing, reasonably well. I'm doing well with all considering, you know what I mean? Just because my tools, I think, and I do see a buddy of mine every morning. We go for a walk, and so that's been a lifesaver for me. We laugh and have great chats, and he's a funny guy. And so if I didn't have that, it would have been really tough the last 5 or 6 months,
Yeah.
But,
I don't want to run past this, because I think you're making a really great point. That is especially, and I think you're right, especially for people who are sheltering in place alone, and maybe it's not enough. How can that, person who's going through that get? I mean, we have to get what we need somehow, don't we?
I mean, eventually, yes. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's just different things that we need, I suppose. And some things, you can do without for a while, and others not so much. I think a lot of people are getting at the end of that, whatever it is for them, all the places are starting to open up, and maybe even a little bit too early. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, there's just, who really knows? But here in LA, we're kind of one of the last places that are still kind of honoring the mask thing, and we're wearing them. We have to wear them in stores, and nobody's wearing them on the. You too probably, but a lot of places are just, I don't know, they're not really taking it serious, or who really knows what. I mean, they're coming up with different ideas about what causes it, and every day. So if it means I have to wear a mask for a few months, I don't care. I'll do it. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm babbling.
You're not babbling. I just think we're touching into so many things, and a lot of them aren't even specific to the pandemic, but we're just seeing them more. I mean, a lot of these are all the reasons people get depressed or sad or lonely.
Yes. And I think before we talked, I don't know if this is a good time to kind of bring in triggers.
You do whatever you want. It's your show.
Well, no, this is equal. That's not my show. I mean, yeah. No, but I mean, well, okay. With that being said, though, I think a lot of folks are being triggered in different ways because of what they've had to go without, or you know what I mean, right? How do I explain that? God, I got triggered last week, and it's not necessarily because of what's going on. I think it's because of the experience I went through with the surgery and everything. And there's this lady just speeds through this neighborhood that my buddy and I walk in every morning. I mean, just freaking flies. And I'm going, slow the F down. I mean, it's just like I get in primal with her. It's like, where is this coming from? And I sat and thought about it and talked with a friend of mine who's a really intuitive healer. And she said, I think you're just, not that I didn't before, but I really realize how precious life is now. And so when I see somebody being a dumbass, I just, wake up.
Yes.
And so I don't get that way anymore because I didn't like the way it made me feel. However, I think I understood why I was reacting that way.
Well, and I don't know if this is where you're going, but so lead me back if I'm going in the wrong direction. But what it brought up for me that I think is so important is I do think that one of the, there's been so much loss and grief and hard stuff, but I think one of the gifts is exactly what you said, is that I think that many people have sort of woken up to how precious this all is. And I know that's kind of a cliche term, but it is like what a miracle it is.
Yeah, right? Life is short.
Life is short and it's fragile. And I think in my own work, I spend a lot of time, all the time, trying to so when a funeral happens or when someone's sick, we tend to, the veil sort of lifts and we tend to feel like, oh my gosh, and we tell everybody how much we love them and we're so in the moment with the people we love. And I think this time has kind of done that for an extended period, which is tapping us into something really important, like what you saw.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's hopefully, go ahead.
No, go, you go.
Oh no, what was I going to say? I mean, it's such a big reset in so many different ways. I mean, and that's just a whole nother conversation. But at the very least, I hope that people, once things get going again, that people hang on to the realization that life is short and precious, and to, let the people, love, that you love them, tell them, and just make a better effort. I think we all get so caught up in our busy lives or whatever, and just, slow down. It's okay. I mean, it's been so interesting. It's been perfect too, this whole surgery thing for me and the healing while this is all going on. I mean, it's helped me in that maybe if it was just business as usual, I'd feel a little bit more of a Jones to kind of get out there or whatever, you know what I mean? And not really sit with what I needed to sit with and let it come through and heal in all the different ways that I needed to. So in some ways, I'm very grateful for that as well.
Yes. And thank you. That was where I was going to go barreling off to myself, which is that when we start to think about how fragile life is and how fleeting it is, often what happens is the first thing that comes up, and I have a lot of coaching clients that this is coming up for them right now, which is, I'm not living my purpose. I'm not on purpose. I feel like, what have I done? I don't want to go back to my job. It feels, so I think that some of the anxiety and the depression is coming from this stuff coming up, which is that realization of, wow,
I'm wasting my time and doing something I don't want to do.
Yeah. And that's not easy to look at. And it can feel depressing but really, especially as a coach, and I know you know this too, as a coach, it's like, that is a launching place, right? That's a place that we can, even though it feels so crappy, right? Nobody wants to feel that. But when we see that, it's a choice time for us of like, I'm glad I saw this because there's still time.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's easy to just think that like, oh crap, I'm a loser, but it's perfect because it's a blessing in disguise. It's time to rebirth.
Yes.
And I want to say hello to Christina. Thank you for joining us. And K-Ab, what's happening, brother? He says he agrees. For himself, he's witnessing more privilege and entitlement issues.
Oh, ask him if he can say some more. Could you? Well, I guess I could.
Expand on that. I mean, I think I know what he's talking about. I see that here. I mean, I see that here all the time in LA, a little bit, with some folks, and they're still zipping around in their cars, even though there's not much traffic, and it's almost more dangerous with less traffic on the road when they're doing that. But I don't know.
So seeing not in oneself, but seeing it in the outer world. That's what I was wondering.
Yes, and seeing it in the outer world, but I think if we're really paying attention, we can see it in ourselves as well. Because we're pretty lucky here in America. And we've gotten kind of sloppy and lazy and entitled in a lot of different ways, and myself included.
Well, that's why I went there right away, because I am so well aware that the way that I live, I am so privileged. And not even just like across the board in America, because we have a lot of people who are, and you're talking about opening up. And this is something that I think is also causing anxiety and depression, which is people who are being forced to go to jobs and maybe they don't feel that it's safe. Maybe they're.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that's not my experience. And I realize the privilege in that. I work from home. I don't have to deal with that kind of that is an awful choice.
I'm sure there's a ton of people who work in restaurants and grocery stores, and if stuff starts to open up before it maybe should be, they're definitely scared.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So there, I mean, there's so many layers, right? I mean, I just feel like there's so many layers to what's happening here, as well as what we haven't even really touched on, but I think is true, is just this, we're all humans together. We're all here together and we're all humans, and there's a lot of suffering going on. And I feel like there's a psychic imprint in a way that there's always been a lot of suffering going on. I mean, well before the pandemic, people were dying every day of all kinds of things. And yet I think we're open to it in a new way. And that's all kind of coming in.
There's a new light. There's a light being shined on a lot of stuff that we weren't really paying attention to before, or most people weren't paying attention to before. Kind of maybe the disparity between the have and have-nots and what have you.
I think that's really important. That is. Yeah. Yeah.
Tamsin says, evolution only occurs when we are uncomfortable, and that is so true. It's so true, so true, so true. And if I try to think of that and remember that when I'm feeling uncomfortable or whatever, I mean, it's just part of life, right? And thank you, Tamsin.
I agree. Yeah, I agree too. And it's really hard. I mean, I think you were one of the first people that I had this conversation with way back, right? Like you and I were just becoming friends, and I hope I'm not going to reveal anything about you that I shouldn't, but I'm just going to go. But we were talking about the spiritual plane of all of this, and that, so many people were saying, and I think are still saying, the earth needed to kind of recoup, that whole what was going on, how we were just running it ragged, as well as just a lot of people feel spiritually that there's a big thing happening right now. And you and I have conversations about that, but then it's it can almost feel like it's at the expense of some people. And for me, that's a really hard place.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy. Yeah, I don't even really know what to say to that, other than just, we all come here, I believe, here we're going to kind of down a different rabbit hole, but, to work on ourselves and to learn and grow with kind of a mission that we've been given. I believe in reincarnation. And I mean, when I was 3, I told my mom I was put here to inspire people. And I kind of feel like, and she reminded me after my first book kind of accidentally came out. And so I kind of feel like my life mission was kind of set. And, while I was getting to that place, I had to do a whole lot of cleaning up myself. And, everything I do or created has just been an extension of my own self-growth process, whether it was a short film or a book or spoken word piece, you name it. So, I'm right there in the trenches working on me as I try to just, help other people step into their own version of love and acceptance. Because ultimately that's what we're here for, I think. I mean, it's probably the hardest thing for us to do, but yeah.
Yeah.
So spiritually speaking, I guess, if one can hang on to that, you just maybe puts one at ease a little bit more during something like this. But then it's still hard to see people suffer, and we still get triggered by stupid people driving way too fast. And I'm a human being having a spiritual being having a human experience, and so I think it's really important. Sometimes when we do a lot of work and we feel like we know some universal truths, we can kind of not necessarily put ourselves above others, but just kind of like, I got that, whatever. But or I don't have to be human. You know what I mean? You try to not be.
Yeah.
But that's why we're here. So go do what pleases you or pleasures you, and as long as it's not hurting someone else. But there's no wrong or right as long as you're living your truth.
That is so beautiful. I want to pause. I like to pause sometimes when it's like that. Is like
Thank you.
That it's both. If we have both, I mean, not everybody wants to have both, not everybody has, but if it's that going wide out and getting perspective and then going right back in and living the human life, right? And really opening our hearts and being connected. But I think the beauty of being human is that we get to have this awareness, right? That we have this great, like, amazing tool that we can kind of get perspective sometimes.
Look for guidance with our intuition, you know what I mean? Or what have you, right? I mean, there's a way to kind of do both.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. And I think it's like a razor thin tightrope that we're on, right? Like just always trying to kind of like keep that balance, I think.
Absolutely. No matter what I'm talking about, it all comes back to balance. Right? It is. No, it really is.
That's so funny. Yeah, that is so great.
It all comes back to balance.
And it's funny because no matter what I talk about, it always comes back to love, right? Like that's
I mean, ultimately, it is all about love. Love is the ultimate. You just trumped me. No, I
didn't want to trump you. What I mean is,
I mean, it's all good.
I know, but I think what happens is like those of us who, I don't know, have a message or whatever. Like that sounds so weird, but I was just talking to some friends today, right? And they were just, because I was like, oh, I don't know, this, that. And they're like, all you want to do is amplify love, right? You just want to like expand love. You want to push the boundaries of love. And I realized like, oh yeah, like to me, that's kind of always the answer, right? Because it was my answer. Like I think, but of course there are millions of answers. And that's what I also love about who we are as humans.
Yeah, I mean, the key is just to believe in your answer and allow people to have theirs. Right? I mean, just stand in the power of yours. I don't know. I mean, it's just, we can this could go off in so many different ways, but
that's what I like about you.
Oh yeah.
I like that, you're multifaceted, right? You aren't you?
Thank you.
Yeah, and so,
I never thought about it like that.
Really?
You mean, well, I don't know, a little bit. Yeah, thanks.
Well, because even this conversation, right? Like, this is a big conversation to talk about depression, right? I could probably talk about depression for the next 20 years of my life and never run out of things to say. Even from my own experience and those of the people that I've either coached or that are my friends or people, like it's such a big topic.
And there's different levels of depression. So I guess with ours, we're skirting the really heavy one because I don't know enough to talk about that. You know what I mean? You do, and other people who are, doctors and whatever would know how to talk about depression. You know what I mean? But
no, I don't even like. So I usually, even though I've gone through it myself, and I kind of think that our family has chemical depression in it. I think that there's definitely, we never got diagnosed, but I always make a differentiation. Like usually, if someone comes to me, it's like, I feel qualified to talk about flatlining. I feel qualified to talk about being blue. I feel qualified to talk about sort of a malaise or a depression in the sense of not like where I was,
Yeah.
Which is funny to say, but I'm not a counselor. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
So I appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. And you've been through it. I mean, deeply through it, so here's a few things that I just scribbled down when I was thinking about this earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Since, I am not, so when we're talking about this pandemic depression, as I'm not trying to like minimize real depression, but like just if somebody's kind of dealing with kind of struggling with what's happening right now and stuff, just try to remember it's hopefully just temporary. It's not going to be like this forever, and just just keep that in the back of your mind, right? Try to visualize what you want to go out and do again. That or it's a good time to create. And
unless you don't feel like it, this is the other.
Unless you don't feel like it, because damn it, I didn't for a while there when I was healing from surgery and stuff. And you're absolutely right. I just wanted to watch Netflix.
This is interesting. This is to me one of the most fascinating parts of these last couple of months, and I followed it very closely. Which is, this is the time to clean your closets. This is the time to write a book. This is the time not to do any of this. You shouldn't be doing any of that. You should just be watching TV. You shouldn't I just think everybody has to look inside. Like you said, it's the time to hold up a mirror and say, what does this human being really need? And
it changes daily. I mean, I can tell you it changes daily for me. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty in tune and do what I use my tools and meditation and stuff. And some days are just days that you are just doing nothing but watching Netflix today. And then another day, we're going to meditate. We're going to start to kind of break out a little bit and maybe just focus on some positive stuff, whether it's a podcast or a video or a comedy movie or whatever. Sometimes you have to give yourself that, especially if you come from a track record like myself of just digging in all the time and not really giving myself those joys or permission to have those joys.
Like you had said earlier, which I thought was a really great point, which is that sometimes we might be drawn to Netflix because there's a movie that's going to kind of, right? It's going to bring up the tears, or it's going to bring up
a message, something we need to hear or be reminded of or be inspired by. I'm inspired all the time by I love listening to interviews and biographies and stuff like that. And, documentaries, those freaking inspire me. And so it's not a waste of time.
Right. Unless,
if that's what you need to give yourself. It can be.
Exactly. So I think that this is, again, everything I believe is based in moments. Everything I believe. Yes. I believe that we make, if we're present in the moment, that we make those decisions in the moment from awareness. Sometimes it's the perfect thing to watch something on Netflix, and sometimes it's distraction or it's denial or it's pushing the feelings away when I really need to. And we can't know. There's no rules. No,
the key is just to just pay attention and to your own, just become as self-aware as you can, and just I don't know, how do I say this? I think the more you practice it, the easier it gets, but just kind of set with something for a second and you'll know whether it's something you should be doing or shouldn't be doing.
Exactly.
Right? It's an intuitive hit, kind of a one way or another. This is a little too negative for me to be watching right now in the state that I'm in, or 7 hours in a row is a little bit too much. Maybe 4 would have been okay, or whatever, right?
I love that. I love that you called it an intuitive hit, because my way of describing it, and I don't know if this is the way it is for everyone, but I don't usually trust what goes on like this. When it's you should blah, blah, blah. But I get, sometimes I'll say it dropped in. So if I pause and think, well, okay, what do I need right now? I hear it from someplace different. It comes from, it's not it's not a voice in my head talking to me. It's more of just a knowing, like you said, or an intuitive hit. And it's
a knowing for me.
It is
too.
Oh, you just froze on me. Am I frozen too?
Oh, not right now. No, okay. Once earlier, but no. Yeah, I agree with you. It's for me. It's a knowing. And
I think that's really important, because oftentimes, if and this is what got me into so much trouble as a young person, is that everything up here was constantly telling me what I should do, who I should be. I wasn't enough. You should do more. Why aren't you accomplishing more? You're not living up to your potential. Just like, no wonder, like that weight. It was like that weight of not enoughness. And I never knew how to look to anything else for guidance. But up here, that was just like, it wanted to just drive me to death, right? Like never enoughness, until I couldn't stand it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. One other thing that just popped into my head, and it's kind of a side. So I mentioned before, like things are temporary kind of right now. So don't and we'll let that weigh you down. But we as humans like to try to control things.
Yeah.
And so right now we're not feeling like we're in control. And so I think that's subconsciously messing with a lot of us.
Great. That's such a great point. That is such a great point. And we're never really in control, right? Like, I think that's the thing. There's usually a very solid illusion of control, but we're not. But the thing, and this is where, forgive me, because I'm going to keep harping, but I feel like if we look at the next moment, like if I just look at the next moment, I don't have control over what happens, but I do kind of have a choice over, like, am I going to just be here, with you in this Facebook Live, or am I going to start to like that's one choice right now. Am I just going to, like, I'm kind of tired, or I'm hungry, and just kind of drift away, like that's a choice always.
I have better things to do, Brian. I'll see you later.
Right. Or, but I do have, or like, like I was saying earlier, there's the choice to just kind of sit outside in the sun for a minute and just like look around at the world with fresh eyes. Like, we don't have control over it, but we do have some choices we can make. And maybe that choice is, I'm just going to go lie down on the couch and close my eyes and cry. That's a choice.
Yeah. No, it just sorry. It's kind of going in and out all of a sudden. I don't know why. Maybe we should wrap it up before it poops out on us completely in a few minutes here. But
I know you're all you're pixied again.
Oh shoot. Okay. Well,
I can still hear you.
Thank you, Kev, for the very kind. Okay, good. Oh, good. Well, I can see you.
As soon as I said that, you froze and I can't hear anything. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? I don't know if I'm frozen too.
Yes. Yes. We better wrap this up before it.
I think so too. It's so sad when you're having a great conversation and suddenly
Can you hear me?
You're back. Yes, now I can.
So to learn more about Sherry, go to what her coach practice and who she is and a lot of other cool things. A brand new Facebook group, and so there's a link to do that as well. And so please pop in if you're able to see that or check that out. But since we're starting to have some problems, we're going to wrap it up. Can you hear me, Sherry?
Now I can. You were gone for a little while, but you're back. Yes, I can hear you. This was so
great. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. No, that was, and I will share it all around. And thank you, everybody, for paying attention and listening and sharing your comments. Awesome. And we both appreciate. I'll be back next. Very much. And yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, Brian. Can you still hear me?
Second.
I think we're still live.
Well, we're still going. Yes.
Just in case